All right, today we're diving into one of the most unbelievable financial crimes in modern history. I mean, forget what you think you know about bank robberies. This is the story of the people who basically plundered an entire continent. 60 billion euros. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's the estimated cost of a scheme that literally siphoned money directly from the public treasuries of multiple European countries. It's a number so huge it's hard to even wrap your head around, but believe me, every single euro was meticulously planned for and taken.
So that's the big question, right? This wasn't some clumsy smash and grab. This was an incredibly sophisticated, complex heist, and it was run from the very heart of the world's biggest financial centers. You know, the guys who did it, they claimed they were just exploiting a loophole. The courts? Well, they had a different word for it: theft.
To really get a sense of the scale here, let's put it in perspective. Think about some of history's most famous robberies. The Pink Panther diamond thieves? Their entire haul is basically a rounding error compared to this. What about when Saddam Hussein took $1 billion from Iraq's central bank? Barely makes a dent. The Cum-Ex heist just dwarfs all of them. It is, without a doubt, the single biggest robbery of our time.
Now, a heist this massive, it requires a real cast of characters. This wasn't the work of just one person. Oh no, this was a sprawling network of top-tier bankers, lawyers, and traders. So let's meet the key players.
You know, every big con needs a mastermind, right? And in this story, prosecutors say that man was Hanno Berger. This guy was once one of Germany's most respected tax officials. Then he switched sides to become a lawyer for the ultra-wealthy. They say he's the one who saw the potential in this structure and weaponized it, turning it into a money-making machine that made him personally millions.
Okay, so if Berger was the architect, Sanjay Shah was the guy who basically turned it into a global franchise. He was operating out of London and Dubai, and his hedge fund, Solo Capital, allegedly took Berger's blueprint and scaled it up to an industrial level. He used it to systematically drain over £1 billion from Denmark's treasury, all by himself.
You know, nothing tells you more about the mindset here than a quote from the man himself. Before he was convicted, Sanjay Shah gave this incredibly honest interview. He said this, revealing exactly how he saw the whole thing. To him, it wasn't some complex financial operation, it was a video game. The goal was just to get the high score, and the points were hundreds of millions of euros of taxpayer money.
And then you've got the insiders. Meet Martin Shields and Nick Diable, two Oxford-educated bankers deep in the London financial scene who were helping put these deals together. They ended up being among the first to go on trial in Germany, and when they decided to cooperate with prosecutors, well, that's what blew this whole secret world wide open.
And what Shields said in court, man, it just reveals so much. He argued this wasn't some hidden back-alley crime. He described a culture where the only thing that mattered was maximum profit optimization. In that world, he said, finding ways to exploit tax systems wasn't just allowed, it was expected. So how did they do it? How did they manage to conjure billions of euros seemingly out of thin air? The whole scheme was known as Cum-Ex trading, and at its heart, it was a beautiful and devastating piece of financial sleight of hand. It really was like a magic trick. The entire con was built on confusing one simple question: who owns the stock? They used a dizzying series of super-fast trades to create this tiny window of time where one block of shares seemed to be in two places at once. It was a carefully designed illusion with an audience of one, the taxman.
Okay, so to get how the trick works, you got to understand what they were targeting. It's something called withholding tax. See, when a company pays a dividend to its shareholders, the government automatically takes a cut as tax. But for big investors, like pension funds, they can usually claim that tax back from the government. That refund system, that was the vulnerability they went after.
Okay, let's walk through this. It's kind of like a four-step plan. Step 1. Right around the day a company pays its dividend, traders would unleash this whirlwind of transactions. Step 2. They'd use all sorts of complex tricks, like short selling, to deliberately make it impossible to tell who really owned the stock. Step 3. This confusion created the illusion. Suddenly, two different people both had paperwork that proved they owned the exact same stock. And step 4? Well, that's the punchline. Both of them would go to the government and ask for a tax refund. A tax that was paid only one time got refunded twice, and the criminals just walked away with the extra cash.
Right, so at this point, you're probably asking yourself, how on earth did they get away with a fraud this big for so long? And the answer, well, it's all about the systemic weaknesses that these guys knew how to exploit perfectly. So how was this even possible? Well, the scheme really stood on 4 pillars of deception. First, they always claimed it was a legal gray area, that they weren't criminals, just smart financiers using a loophole. Second, the complexity was intentional. These trades were a labyrinth, designed to be so confusing that no tax authority could ever untangle them. Third, they ran the whole thing across borders, operating from London to hit treasuries all over Europe, so no single regulator could see the whole picture. And finally, the sheer scale of it all. Major banks, major law firms, they were all involved, which gave the whole thing a false sense of legitimacy.
And when you boil it all down, this wasn't just a technical failure of the system. It was a cultural one. The only goal was profit. And inside that bubble, taking billions from the public wasn't seen as theft. It was just called elite financial engineering.
But, like all great heists, this one couldn't last forever. Thanks to some really stubborn investigators, fearless journalists, and of course, crucial testimony from insiders, the whole scheme came crashing down.
The dominoes fell slowly, and then all at once. It really started in 2019 when the trial of Shields and Diablo dragged the whole thing into the spotlight. But the big one, the real earthquake, was in July 2021 when Germany's highest court made its ruling. After that, things sped up fast. Hanno Berger, the architect, was sentenced in 2022, and Sanjay Shah, the trader, got hit with one of the longest sentences for financial fraud in Danish history in 2024.
For years and years, their argument was always the same. Hey, we just used a legal loophole in the tax code. But the German Federal Court of Justice completely dismantled that argument. Their ruling was crystal clear. This was not clever lawyering. This was, and I quote, intentional criminal tax evasion aimed at plundering the state.
And that ruling? It changed everything. It gave prosecutors all over Europe the legal firepower they needed to go after anyone involved. The whole loophole defense was officially dead, and the doors to courtrooms across the continent were suddenly kicked wide open.
And that kind of leaves us with a final, pretty unsettling thought. The Cum-Ex scheme operated in plain sight for more than a decade, and a lot of people just thought it was a legitimate business strategy. It really makes you wonder, now that this one's been shut down, what other complex, intentionally confusing financial loopholes are out there right now, quietly siphoning away billions more?
So while markets rise and fall, systems like this quietly move billions behind the scenes, hidden from the public, hidden from scrutiny, and sometimes hidden from the law itself. Because in global finance, the most powerful forces are rarely the most visible. And this is just one of the systems used by the unseen elite.